welcome to the show. I'm Cali,
I'm Craig.
and today we have a very special guest. Craig's husband, John Robin, is joining us.
Hello, good to be here.
We're super happy to have you back. Thanks for coming back so soon. We had so many questions we wanted to ask you.
Oh, good. I'm ready.
You were away on retreat this week. How was the retreat?
It was hard work. Like a lot of times when people think of retreats, they think of a getaway where you relax. And I mean, I tell people I go for meditation, and even some of the meditation retreats I've been on are relaxing. You get to just contemplate. Well, this was hard work. It's that thing where you got to meditate and focus on your breath and try and
Yeah.
discover something. And oh boy, yeah, it was near the end. I finally got it, but wow, it was a lot of work.
Aw. I
But
feel like
glad
I feel like you I feel like we're not thinking about this in the right way because like Craig and I just worked like 3 14-hour days while you were away on your retreat. So I'm not really sure that I believe that the retreat the retreat was that difficult.
Okay, so to give you an idea, on Sunday, I worked for 17 hours on meditation. And I
Whoa.
am not kidding you. I am not exaggerating. I
So you
actually
win. Is that what you're saying? You're
What's
saying you
that?
win? You win? So you win.
Well, I wasn't sitting there in a spa enjoying myself. Let's put it that way.
That's what
But
I think of when I think
it's
of a
not
retreat.
work that would amount to tasks getting done. It's
Oh,
just sitting there in a chair and having to not move.
oh
And
my
even like,
gosh.
I want to move, or even like you're not allowed to think. You have to try and just focus on your breath, and everything that comes up is a distraction. That is really hard. It's,
Wow.
and
I
that's the
definitely could not
training.
do that. I could not
No,
do that. Greg,
no, it's
how often is your brain quiet enough that you can meditate? I can tell you right now, 0% of my day is quiet enough for me to meditate.
Like 1% of my day,
Yeah.
maybe, if that. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't either. John, that's easy. Is that easy for you? Like, are you pretty
well,
relaxed most of the day? Like crickets in here in your head? I'm pointing to my head. Sorry for those of you at home. Because for
oh,
me, it's super noisy, loud.
yeah, like I don't so when I get interested in something, I can concentrate a long time. Like the piano, the last piece I recorded, I practiced for 13 hours.
Wow.
But I was so I'm super into it. My concentration is there and I can do that kind of stuff. And so with the meditation, I think what it is I was getting it all wrong, and the teacher, he pushed me,
Hmm.
and he was giving me the right direction, and he was convincing me this is worth that you're going to discover something if you can get through this. And so
Wow.
it became like the piano for me, where I'm like, I want to know what he's talking about. And so
Yeah.
I committed myself,
That's so
and I
cool.
found the way it's set up, you live like a Buddhist monk. So I only ate
Mhm.
2 meals. And just everything is stripped away. You're out in nature, and it gets you, like, if I was here with all my, even just my phone and all the things
Yeah.
distracting me, I wouldn't be able to do it. So
Yeah.
there's, to get that quiet and be able to do it, there's a lot about why you need to go away out into like a forest or something, and strip away all the busy stuff. But even that's hard. Like even then, you find how busy your mind is. Like it's
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
it's
I mean,
quite a
like,
process.
we've talked about this before, you and I think Craig and I too, just about you, because I know we have like three different social media styles out of the three of us, right? Because Craig, you're definitely like the most involved with social media, right?
Particularly on Twitter and Instagram, yeah.
Yes. Okay. Because the other day, remember, I was joking, John, because we knew that Instagram was not working right because it said that Craig was not on Instagram for like 10 hours. And we knew that that was not true because there's never a time that Craig is not on Instagram for 10 hours, right?
The only time I'm offline 10 hours is I've been asleep for 10 hours.
Yeah, that's it. And then you have me who was off of social media entirely until I started writing. And then I created social media literally just for my writing career, and that's it. And then we have you, and you have your own unique perspective on social media because
Mhm.
you do what is your style exactly?
As little as possible. Like I don't go through reels, and and even notifications, unless you at mention me or something, I don't tend to see that. So and that's just partly, I find, I really, well, when I started just working from home, I get so distracted by, like, say if I'm trying to edit a book and
Mm-hmm.
then there's notifications on my phone, it would just make it so hard for me
Yeah.
to get engaged. And so I went through a thing where I went through every app and I turned every notification off, even those numbers that tell you I turned that all off.
Wow.
And ever since I did that, it's like, okay, I like this. I feel like my brain is less all
Yeah.
over the place. And then
Yeah.
it lets me get, like, say if I'm editing a book, like I have sometimes someone will say I need this book edited in a week, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
a 80,000 word novel, and
Wow.
I got to buckle down and get it done. But like it allows me to be able to do that kind of stuff, whereas I
Yeah.
find that before it would be like all the notifications going off,
Yeah.
or like it's just like I'd rather be here because I don't have, I get a distraction. So
Do you have the same policy for like texts and phone calls, or like your text and phone calls can come through?
yeah, actually, I do have my phone in do not disturb when I'm working,
Uh-huh.
but when I do check my phone, so what I do is I leave the phone out of reach, usually for a period of time. Then
Mm-hmm.
when I pick it up, like I go in and I make a point of things like I check my text. I'll maybe pop into my email inbox. And then I might pop into Instagram just to see if there's some
Yeah.
messages there that I've missed. So I prefer it to be that way, where it's like I know there's things I want to check. But if there's
Yeah.
ever like an emergency, the phone
Yeah.
is set up that if somebody calls, because usually someone's calling you to get a hold of you, they call back a second time if they get your voicemail, and
Yes.
then it breaks through the do not disturb stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah. No. And today for me was my first day without my phone since I took on working with you guys. So today was very difficult for me personally. So I don't know how you do it, honestly, because I'm not at the level that Craig is where he's much more active than I am on social media, but I like to have control over things, and like, working closely with Craig, I like to keep an eye on things. And like today, it was like my husband was like, I want you to just take a day off. It's Thanksgiving and let's just totally disconnect. And I was like, sure, that'll be super easy. And I was like, okay, it's not super easy. So I don't know how you did it, but I have an interesting question for both of you. And I'm going to
Uh-oh.
take Craig's answer first. Okay.
Uh-oh.
So here is the question. Would you rather never use social media again or never watch another TV show or movie again?
Oh, never do social media again. As involved as I am, I could leave it behind. For John and I, TV and movies is sort of our thing, like TV and
Hmm.
movies every single day.
Hmm.
And so that's our way of connecting, and I would not want to give that up.
Yeah, our chat doesn't count. Our chat that goes
No,
beyond. That's not social media, so that
it's
doesn't
not.
count. So
But if
we're
it
not
was
giving that up.
social media, if it was on social media, that would
We,
be
yeah,
a iffy.
it would be iffy. Yeah, for me too. John,
well,
John, we
email
know what.
doesn't count as social media, right? Like,
No,
because for
no.
me, I could, yeah, I'd answer the same as Craig. Like, I would not lose the TV and movies, but when it comes to social media, I'm like, well, how would I, like, most of the time, and this, if
Hmm.
I prefer to have my stuff come through email,
Yeah.
just because then I can kind of organize and star things or leave something unread if it's like I need to deal with this the next day or two.
But I think that you
Um,
make yourself like almost seem more important by doing that. It's almost like you're like unreachable. Because before, like I knew you guys, like knew you the way I know you now. Like if I would message you anything and you wouldn't message me back until midnight, I'm like, oh man, he's like really important, thinking really hard to get a hold of. And now I'm like, no, he just has a certain schedule, which is
yep.
like really cool that you can stick to it because I don't know how you do it. And it's amazing. And anyone who hires you as an editor should know that you absolutely are not distracted by social media, that
Yeah.
editing comes first, and that's really
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I can't ask you that question. It's not relevant for you, but I can ask you a couple writing questions that I did get asked. So I have a couple things. So the first one, and Craig, we did talk about this a little bit, but I think this might have been the question that we said we were going to say for the podcast. Someone asked me recently, they're a new writer, and they are querying agents first, and then if that doesn't work out, then they're going to go to publishing houses. But the thing that they were struggling with, it was kind of a question was kind of phrased weird. But they were having a lot of trouble just trying to identify the genre for the submission. And they were wondering, like, what is the best thing to do when your book kind of blends and you can't really, like, should you try and put it in a box, like, for one genre? What if it matches like a couple genres? Like, do you pick the most popular genre? Like, I don't know what you would
Yeah,
suggest for
so
that.
I would answer that from the perspective of when I'm publishing something. So when I upload it to Amazon or Smashwords or Ingram Spark or some of the other sites, I have to pick categories that things go in. So I need to know what genre this is. So there are a lot of things that transcend genres or blend genres, but I would want to know what's the primary genre. Like if you could only have one shelf in the bookstore that this goes in, where do you want it to go? So that information is helpful for us for marketing. But if it does sort of blend genres, transcend genres, borrow elements from other genres, that is also helpful because, for example, if it's a romance book, but there's like an international spy intrigue suspense element to it, then that's romantic suspense.
Okay.
Or romantic thriller or something like that. So there's sort of like subcategories, but with that main dominant category has to be clear. And I know this wasn't exactly what the question is, but I'm going to throw this in there. Quite often we get, maybe not quite often, but we get a fair number of queries where people say this book is undefinable by genre, or it's not your typical romance story or not your typical YA story. And that sounds good, but then when it comes to publishing, I still have to put it in categories. So I need to know what category it fits in.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? And so I know that their follow-up question was, and then John, I think that you could take this one, was when they're querying, what if you're not looking for something? What if, like you said, Craig, like, let's just say, what was the example you used? Suspense, romantic suspense?
Romantic suspense, yeah.
So what if they're querying and it is, say, romantic suspense, John, right? But you're only looking for suspense. So, like, what would you suggest that they do? Like, so if because pretty soon we're going to be opening up for submissions, and we're going to blast out like everything that we're looking for and what we think is going to be like the best fit for us. So pretending that suspense was on that category, John, but this was a romantic suspense novel, would you look at it if it said romantic suspense, or would you prefer that they just label it as suspense? Like, are they giving themselves a better chance if they take out romantic and just say it?
Well, the thing to keep in mind too is, like you say, you're doing a query letter. I mean, ideally you want to pin your genre down in that first sentence or two of the opening paragraph, if you're following the query format. But I mean, I mean, I can tell you how I read query, because I'm the one who decides on what we publish, and I'm reading lots and lots of query letters.
This is why I'm asking you.
Yeah, and so I don't literally read that first sentence and I'm not interested in that genre, and then it's okay. I mean, I read the letter over and then, I actually, even when there's something and I'm like, I'm pretty sure this is a no, I always, it's a courtesy to the author who has spent their time writing this book, and just for me, a measure of respect, I will still look at the manuscript. I will still take a look at what they're doing, because the other side is, I want to know, is there anything I can say? And usually Craig handles the communication for queries. I mean, he sends it to me and I assess it, and then I let him know which way I think we should go. But is there anything we can offer to be helpful? Because sometimes there's maybe some craft issues, there's other things we can pass along. So, when I'm looking at a story, you might say romantic suspense, and I'm like, okay, and I'm always aware it's like someone might not have it pegged. Like I might say, I don't think it's a romantic suspense.
Right.
Or I might see the story and I'll be like, I see lots of potential for this to be a YA romance. Maybe suspense is a secondary element. And so, like there's that. I mean, so you do your best to, and what I would say with genre is it's actually good to know your genre. Either going into writing the book or when you start revising it and deciding where does this fit, to get that figured out. But that should be a thing you work on structurally, not so much what tag fits it. You should be thinking about where would this book fit and what sort of tropes, what kind of conventions that, if you grabbed 10 or so books that are the closest out there that are similar to yours, like what kind of stuff.
But isn't that's like interesting to me personally, because like we talked about the genre conventions before and the tropes. And is that the same thing, by the way? Is a trope and a genre convention the same?
I feel like they kind of are, although tropes are often like they almost border on cliche, like they're so I don't want the is different, so they're not, it's just they're things that you'll say, oh, they do that all the time. And like just take a romance, like take a romance movie, and of course there's going to be a scene where there's everything seems impossible and they hate each other and it's never going to work out. It's but I like convention because it gets you thinking a little bit more abstract about it, whereas a trope is often very tangible thing where you're like, oh, I knew that was coming. Whereas a convention is more something that someone might not know, oh, I knew that was coming. But if you didn't follow the convention, someone's going to read your book and they're going to be like, that book didn't work, but they won't know why. So the conventions are something that more an editor or somebody who knows the nuts and bolts of how, like, just to think structurally how a plot comes together in a certain genre. Those conventions are there. An editor is going to see it, and a writer who knows their genre will see it. A reader probably won't, but they will certainly know that something is not working in that book.
Not right. I understand. That's crazy. I know I'm having Craig is teaching me a little bit at a time for things that I can look at, because I want to become able to look at it and see what you guys see. And I know it's going to take a lot of time, but I'm having a lot of fun with it. I love reading the query and then reading the synopses and seeing what it says. And so I'm having a lot of fun with that. It's really it's really interesting to me. And I love seeing the raw emotion that people put into those things, when they're asking and they're submitting, and it's so emotional for a writer, and I think that you can almost feel like a piece of them in those letters, and they're so important. And I feel bad that something like a query letter causes someone so much stress, after they've done the hard part. I mean, the hard part's done. You came up with a story, you wrote the story, you're done. And then you have these new writers and seasoned writers too, who are just very intimidated by the querying process. So I know, Craig, I know the answer to this because we've talked about it before. But what is the most, and it's fine if you go off on this a little bit, because I think I know what you're going to say. But because Craig is the one, for anyone who doesn't know, Craig receives the submissions first, and then Craig reviews them, and then Craig sends them to John. So Craig, let's say three. What are the three most important things that you look for when you get a submission?
Three most important things. So these don't necessarily have to be in every submission, but they do stand out. So for example, when someone puts something personal about themselves in the submission that's really interesting or could be the basis for a really good story, and then I see that reflected in the story, that usually leads to really good writing. I know they're writing from a place of authenticity. But conversely, if they reveal something about themselves that I wish they put in the story, but they didn't, and if it ends up being a rejection, it would be one of those like revise and resubmit rejections where we say we liked your story, not enough for us to take it, but you told us this thing about yourself. I would love if you could work that into the book somehow. Send it back. I would love to take a look at it. So number one that I look for is that personal piece of information about them and how it relates to the book, which does not have to be there because that doesn't always apply. But when it's there, it's important. Number two is, can they describe their book in 1 to 2 paragraphs? And that is damn difficult. I've had to do it myself. When I wrote my first YA book, John wanted me to write a 1 to 2 page synopsis, and then he wanted me to write a 2-paragraph summary. And even though I'd been in the game of publishing books for a few years by that point, that was flippin' difficult. So that's, again, it's not a make or break thing. People can be awful at writing synopses. I am one of them. And the book can be amazing. But if you have a really cool synopsis that really sells the book on me, that's going to get me really engaged and really motivated to want to like your book. And then the third thing I look for is an engaging first page of the manuscript. And first pages are, again, damn difficult. How do you grab someone from that first sentence, that first paragraph, that first page? And so I see people trying things. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. If you're one of those people that overstresses about it and you're submitting to us, if you don't catch me on the first page, I just skip ahead. Because first pages, first chapters, everyone struggles. So I skip like maybe a quarter of the way in, a third of the way in, and I look at the writing there, because sometimes it can be quite different. But if you do catch me on the first page and you have that really cool synopsis and it ties into your personal life somehow, I'd be real hard pressed to say no. There'd have to be a real damn good reason why I'm not saying yes.
Yeah. And we actually we had a book last week on Friday that we were looking at, and it was not a submission to us, but I had asked Craig John to look at this book with me, and we were looking at different things, and I was like, oh, this is really good and it's really well written, and I was like, well, I see this. Is this something that you would see? And we went back and forth on it for a bit. So like, I'm totally fascinated by the submission process, and I'm like, I couldn't be like more excited that I get to like learn how it works. But yeah, I would definitely say that I have seen Craig do it. So if you are submitting to us, do not be afraid of that first page, because if he's not impressed on the first page, he does skip to the middle. And I don't know, John, do you do the same? Are you the same when you get a submission?
Well, yeah, I mean, I actually survey the entire book. So I think it's important to sort of throw out there are different types of reading. A lot of people, when they think of reading, they think of the, page one and take it all in, which is more of almost like a deep read, a light read, depending on how quickly you're going. And, but the highest level is surveying. So in other words, it's actually, surveying is faster than skimming. It's where you go over the whole thing, and you're trying to let your eyeballs take in as much as you can. And you're going at a speed that's faster than you could possibly read any words. And the main thing that you're looking at is, what are the chapters? Do you see certain so what sentences catch your eye? And so what that lets me do is get a glance at the voice, get a feel for the voice, get a sense of structure. Where is it going? How's it pieced together? What little thing, and occasionally a certain sentence will capture my attention, and I'll be like, okay, I see how this person puts sentences together. I see how they string words together. So you're really going to these higher level things. And then based on how that goes, that's sort of where I decide, okay, what do I think at this point? And I'm looking at the synopsis. And then what I might do is go back and do skim of where I'll slow down. Maybe I'll go back to some of the spots that caught my attention and just get a bit more details. So I'm not strictly trying to read the whole thing front to back when I'm assessing, because I'm ultimately trying to get enough information to know, is this a rejection? It is, or and so really it's okay. You passed my skim test, so I'm still interested. So then at that point I might look at doing a light read, where so I'm not on the first page and oh I made it to page 1.5 and I got bored. Now that said, I do really place a lot of weight on the first I'd say the first 5 pages, but definitely the first page. I'm not so much thinking about you have to catch me in the first 5 pages for me to take it. But I do, what I'm assessing in that case is I'm imagining a prospective reader picking this book up off the shelf, and I'm trying to say, what grabs me here? Do I get a sense of characters and some kind of intriguing situation? There's something going on that's just got my attention. It's almost always going to be character oriented. I mean, that's a big thing. Sometimes I'll have manuscript, there's no character, it's all a bunch of setting or something. And that right away is like if I was picking that book up on a shelf, there's nothing intriguing to put me in. So really, I think the idea here is the whole thing about the first page has to be perfect or else. I mean, yes, in some of the bigger publishers where they've got 1,000 submissions that came in their inbox that week. They have to be pretty ruthless. They probably don't even have time to do what I do with the surveying and skimming. It's literally like read the query. It might even be like 130,000 words. No, reject. like they don't even get further than that. So they can be pretty like hard in how they decide. And we don't get 1,000 submissions a week. So we have the time to really assess things a little deeper. So if you're looking at, I think one thing that's important, sometimes people will throw a prologue in their book and all these sorts of things as well, wait till you get to chapter 1. And the important thing for any writer who's submitting is just whatever your book, think about the first 5 pages anybody's going to see as the book, and just does a story start there? Is that going to catch attention? And if not, where does it start? And can you start it there?
Let me ask you this though, because it takes a really long time, for your book to get published. You sign a book, and I think we talked about this the last time you were on the podcast, that the time that you submit and then you get accepted, it's usually Craig, what's the time frame that between, generally speaking,
between submission and acceptance?
But publication, no, between submission, let's just say submission, then we get accepted, which can vary based on how big the workload is. But then after acceptance, how long to publication generally?
Depending on how many good books we've decided to take, anywhere from 10 to 16 months, maybe. Right now, It's November 2023. We're booked up to about October 2024.
Yeah, that's what I thought when I looked at the calendar too. But I thought, John, I think that we talked about this because we were saying that, when someone gets a great idea and when they see a book and they're like, oh, I really like this book, and they're like, I want to write about it right now. But then you as an editor are well, that was a year ago that we decided on that. Right? Isn't that about what it is? About a year?
Yeah. With us,
roughly?
with a year, that's shorter. With bigger publishers, it's a year and a half. Usually at least a year and a half.
So what is the best advice that you would have for someone that writes a book, right? Because write the book, you feel really super great about it. You're high on this book and you think you're going to be a millionaire, and maybe you will be. I have no idea. And then you get accepted and you feel even better, right? You haven't been beaten down by edits yet, because edits are gonna destroy basically all of us, from what I've heard, and I'm ready. I'm very ready for this. But what is your advice for people that you go through all those emotions, right? And then before you even get to editing, because editing is probably 9 months away, right? We need 3 months editing it. If we're saying it's a year, right?
Yeah,
we would say,
just do that basic
if we
math,
just use a year as a right? So we're going to say so that 9 months in between, what do you suggest for a writer that's looking back at the manuscript that you guys have already accepted and is well, this sucks. Like I've grown already as a writer and I don't like what I've written. Like, do you think that that's a common feeling for a new writer to have that? To have like, I would say it's almost like a period of growth that they go through, no? You're nodding your head. Yeah, go.
Oh, I wasn't sure who you
Whoever.
were asking.
Whoever.
Yeah,
You're good.
I can really speak to this one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, having been in the seat as the writer getting edited.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so first of all, I'd say like the idea is that you should, I mean, it's not that you should be feel the editing is torture or anything, but that's the idea is you should not, when you're done with editing, you'd be like, I never want to see this book again. The reason is you don't want it, you want it to get to the point where you're done. You're like, I did the work on this and I trust the public, I trust the editors that
Mm-hmm.
that we're all done with this book.
Mm-hmm.
Because the reality is you could pick up your book 3 years after it's published and you'd be like, oh, I want to edit this.
Yes.
And no, the idea is as a writer, move on and write another story. And that is
Gotcha.
where you level up your game. But the thing about the editing process is to grow as a writer and all that. Actually, there are beautiful, like I look at the editing as a chance for you to have some other person, especially like a trained editor who has
Mm-hmm.
that skill, come
Mm-hmm.
in and give you some angles and now give you permission to go back and do that thing where you will have been away from the book and you'll be like, oh, this is
Mm-hmm.
terrible, I want to fix this. Like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's great, now you're here and you have permission to do that. You're going to have the editor's edits to make sure there are some, because what'll happen is rather than if you were just doing it yourself, there might be blind spots where you don't realize there's something that needs to be worked
Mm-hmm.
on. But then
Yeah.
also there might be something your editor just loves, and then
Mm-hmm.
that might have been a part you were going to cut because you
Yeah.
weren't sure about it. So it's kind of twofold. What happens is it's like you're equipped with
Mm-hmm.
what you need,
Mm-hmm.
and then like with editing, we use track changes and
Mm-hmm.
also give some instruction.
Mm-hmm.
I have never seen the case where somebody goes crazy in their rewrites and like goes way off track. Like
Yeah.
I have seen, like, it's kind of you're going over your book, you're back there and you're like, you know what, I really want to improve this dialogue here
Mm-hmm.
because the way these characters talking, it's just not, it's off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they edit, like, and when I see that, I mean, my request, when I set the writers up, is say, can you just leave me a comment? Any edits you make, if you can leave a comment to explain where you're coming from, that helps me to know. So if I see a dialogue that's not, I didn't do any edits here, and it's been
Mm-hmm.
rewritten, and I'm like, okay, what, why?
Yeah.
But what
Yeah.
I find is because of how I set people up and instruction I give, there will be comments there. It'll be like, character A was talking, just didn't sound right, and
Yeah.
I wanted to improve it. And I'm like, okay, perfect. Because then when I look at that, I'm going to read that scene over, knowing the intention, and I'm going to be like, okay, yeah, I see what you did. Great work. Or if there's a
Interesting.
little something
Yeah.
else that needs attention, I can comment on that. But yeah,
Yeah.
so I mean, that it's just natural that a book can always be better. And you know what? If it goes through the edits, we could probably hire 5 more editors and extend the period a
Mm-hmm.
year, and it would be even better. But the thing
Yeah.
is, it's not practical to do that. I think the thing is, you just don't want to be self-editing and then
Mm-hmm.
publishing it with no input,
Yeah.
because there's very bad chance that you're going to catch everything if you do it all on your own. The publishing
Yeah.
process brings professionals in who are
Yeah.
skilled at editing and genre knowledge, and how to get a final book together to
Yeah.
help you set number of steps,
Mm-hmm.
go through a process and level.
So you would say that after a book is submitted and
Yep.
accepted, that person should just, let's just put it out of our minds, right?
If you can, yeah, you like, we do tell people, don't go and start changing your book until you get your edits. If
Mm-hmm.
actually, there's been a few times where somebody wanted to do something, I recommend because the thing is, you're going to get the manuscript that you submitted from your editor at some point. And so if you have edits, like what I recommend you do is do it in a clean document.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to transfer that all over into your file. And
yeah,
because you can't submit, like you can't submit a new updated edited file saying, oh, please use this one. I have seen that happen a few times. And then just what we told the writer is just gave him some steps on how to document it and keep that going on their end. And when they get their edits,
I'm curious if the voice changes, if the voice of the author, if you would notice it. You know what I mean? Like if somebody went back in, I mean, you'd know anyways because you have it. But I'm just curious if the voice changes a little bit. You know what I mean? Do you know what I mean when I say that? Like if somebody, like from what I wrote, like just taking me as an example, Craig, like I think that my voice has already changed, right? Because I'm not in those stories right now and I'm not like writing, I'm not even in the same zone as I was in. So now that I'm reading it, does that happen to you, Craig, when you write?
Oh yeah. Like, I mean, I'm very pleased or proud of all the books that I've published, but I really don't want to go back and read my first several books. I don't know if I even want to go back and read my last book because all writers do grow. And so when you look back, you're looking at like a frozen moment in time of how you wrote at that time. And you might be in a completely different place now. So I do know what you mean. But for authors that are in this place, remember your book was accepted. So the publisher / editor saw something that they really liked. And so you don't want to go and make a bunch of changes because if they liked it, it's a frozen moment in time, but it could also be you captured some lightning in a bottle. And as you grow, you see the parts of you that have grown and you're like, oh, but there's also all those parts that were pretty damn awesome the first time around.
Yeah. It's interesting. It really is. It's hard. So I have a question for both of you, and I already know my answer to this question because it's the beauty of me making up the questions. So for Craig, you want to go first or John? I'm not going to tell you what the question is, so you get to just choose whether it's you or John. It's not a hard one.
John can go.
Okay. So John, I'm going to let you choose. So do you have either a favorite author that you think that you could read anything that they wrote? Or B, do you have a favorite book that you've read more than 3 times?
If
you can't do it, I'll do it.
Those, actually, but
you do?
Yeah,
Who's the favorite author?
Okay, so the favorite author where I would read every book by them. That now this changes through my life, but right now it's Roger Penrose. So or in the nonfiction. And I've just been hooked. I want to know everything he has to say about, some of the physics theories of where the Big Bang came from and what human consciousness is as a physical substance. Like he actually manages to explain this stuff, and it's like a window to you're getting a sense like all these people that were like graduate students from the 1950s and onward as all this science stuff. It's almost like the little back and forth chatting and discussions that is underlying this. We see all these cool science theories and when it's popularized, but like his stuff, he actually really shows you into like the details of like, and it's not as certain as the popular stuff makes it look. And so I absolutely love his writing. And so I guess, you think we do fiction that I would be like, I don't know, George R. R. Martin or something. But there was a time in my life where George R. R. Martin was that. And honestly, when he finally puts the sixth book out in his series, and then, hopefully we'll someday do the 7th and finish it, I will gladly read those. But I've moved on from him.
So Roger Penrose. So what's the favorite book?
Lord of the Rings. I have read it 3 times. I think I started it a 4th and didn't finish it. I actually have typed up the first 130 pages. I did that as a writing exercise. And that is how into Tolkien's like that book goes back to my childhood, and it's what got me into fantasy. It's what got me into writing. And there's something so deep about my relationship to
Who's your favorite
Lord of the
character?
Rings.
Favorite character, Lord of the Rings. You can only pick one. Ready, set, go.
Oh God. Probably Gandalf. Like I have a hard time with that. I like quite a few of them, but I to say Gandalf would be yeah.
Craig, who's your favorite character in Lord of the Rings?
Oh God, do I even remember any names? I don't like
Okay.
this
It's
is a
not
really
yours.
this
That's
is a
not for you.
mismatched marriage. Like
Yeah.
she's fantasy, I'm science fiction.
I know.
There's a little bit of crossover there. Like
Yeah.
he's liking some Star Trek, but yeah,
Yeah.
no.
So what do you pick? Do you have both too? Do you have a favorite author and a favorite book that you've read more than 3 times or no?
So the answer to both is sort of no. So I'm deliberately avoiding any of our authors because I love all the books that we publish, and so I don't want anybody to feel jealous of somebody else because I picked the wrong author. But outside of what we publish, so I don't currently have a favorite author, and I don't think I've ever read a book 3 times, but there's a reason for that. So there was a sci-fi series by an author called Karen Loichi. I might be pronouncing it wrong. That was from the early 2000s. It was this sci-fi trilogy where each book followed a character, and it was so fucking good, so good. And I had all these really good memories of like how the opening page gripped me, and like I would dream about it. Several years later, I thought, you know what? I love this book so much. I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to read it again. And I
Yeah.
read the first paragraph and it was not what I remembered. So I closed the book and I'm like, I want to keep my memories. I'm sure this book is
Yeah.
awesome and
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll blow my mind again, but I want to keep my memories.
Interesting.
And so there's another author, Robert Buettner. He wrote 2 sci-fi series. One was a 5-book series, and the second one was, I think, a trilogy. But the 5-book series, it was good. Like the first 3 books were really good. Book 4 wasn't really my thing, or maybe it was book 3 wasn't my thing. Anyway, book 5 blew my flipping mind. Like
Yeah.
I was stunned and in a daze for like a week after reading that book.
Yeah.
But given how I had that experience of trying to pick up that other series and it not being what I remembered, I don't want to
I don't
pick up,
blame you.
yeah.
Yeah, I'd never even thought of that.
Yeah. So the only books that I read more than once are Pride and Prejudice and Crime and Punishment.
Oh, I love Pride and Prejudice so much.
So in high school I had to read Pride and Prejudice, could not get past page 13.
Really?
Like I lied on all the book reports. This was the days before like it being all over the internet. So
Well,
I just
yeah.
like
Yeah.
bullshitted my way through it. And I had to read it again for university, loved it. And then I read it again a couple years ago, loved it again.
Me too.
Crime and Punishment, once I get through the first like 50 pages, it's like this rip-roaring adventure for me. Like I cannot put it down.
Well, for me, I have MXTX, which I am still trying to get you to read. And MXTX has written Heaven Official's Blessing, Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, and Scum Villain's Self-Saving System. I think that's the right way that is. If not, then I'm sorry. It's something like that. But for me, that is the best writing I've ever read, like hands down. Like she will take you from page 1 all the way through, and like her books are big. Like these are big, big books, but like they have everything in them, and like her character development is so good. I mean, I was trying to get one of our writers, I was messaging in Instagram and we were talking about book recommendations, and I was like, you have to read Heaven Official's Blessing. And I've read that book. Like, I can't say I've read it all the way through because it's not totally done in English yet. It's not fully published in English. But I've read what I have, the volumes that I have, I've read them all if I'm not exaggerating, maybe 3 to 4 times each, and they're pretty long. But they like, she's still like emotionally, like she pulls on every single emotion in those books, and they're all just so damn good. I told the other writer that she is one person that if she ever appeared in front of me, I would literally bow down because she is the freaking mother of all BL. She is the mother of novels for me. And I would do anything. Like if she had like a GoFundMe for anything, I would go fund whatever the hell she wanted. I'd give her whatever. I'd fully support her. If she had a Patreon, I'd be like her number one Patreon. And I think anybody else would too. So you guys should read those books for sure because they're really, really good.
Okay. And so you're gonna have to send me Heaven's Blessing or something.
It's Heaven Official's Blessing. Yeah.
Okay.
And the other one is Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation. Now, Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation has sex. Heaven Official's Blessing does not. There are extras and stuff, and there's some stuff in there, but yeah, no. But she can write it. She can get it. So there's the scenes in Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation. There is a very famous bathtub scene, without giving too much away. Very good. The end by me. That's it.
Okay.
So you should get that and read it. But they actually have that one has an anime, and that I have the DVDs of that. And Heaven Official's Blessing is on. It was on Netflix the first season. The second one is on Crunchyroll, and I have thoughts about that, but we'll do that on a different podcast because I don't even want to talk about it. It's too. She deserves better than what's happening with that right now. So there's that. So, but for funsies, I have a couple funsie questions. So because we were talking about MXTX, the mother of all BL, this is what we were talking about on Instagram, by the way. So I'm going to go to John first, just for fun, because I don't know if it's going to make you uncomfortable or not.
Okay.
Okay. So describe your perfect kiss in 3 words. Can be one that you read or can be for yourself if it makes you too uncomfortable. If it makes you uncomfortable, just say then your favorite kiss to read.
Well, it's definitely going to be something to read or watch in a movie.
Okay. It can't be related to you. I got you.
I'm just trying to do this in 3 words, right?
3 words, but I'll tell you that the group I was discussing with we had a very hard time with it. So if the word is kind of like not a compound word, but it's 2 words, but it describes one action, we can count as 1 word, i.e. hair pulling, lip sucking. We're going to count that as one thing.
So I might come at this from a different, I'll come at this like an editor, because when I work with editing, I throw the words on, not necessarily in the final order, but I think grinding would be like body, like, so basically a very erotic charged kind of kiss. Why don't I just say grinding, erotic, charged? That's my favorite kind of kiss.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Craig, you want to go or you want me to go?
Sure. No, I have at least 1 word, and that would be heady. So to explain that, there was a romance book I read, an romance book. About 90% of the book, keeping in mind it's like a 50,000 word book, was one sex scene. And you'd think, oh my God, how many like tab A and slot B descriptions are you going to go through? But it was all about the heady stuff. It was all the emotions. I think it was a couple that had sort of fallen on the outs and they were trying to bring back the magic. And so it was a lot of this emotional, heady, really all up in the head. So it wasn't really the physical, like, this is what his lip tastes like. And not so heady. I'm going to go with open-mouthed as 1 word because it's hyphenated. And preferably they're naked. So naked.
We had a long talk about this, me and my Instagram friends. But I have hair pulling, hungry, wet. That's what I got. But I also, some of the Instagram group had like lip sucking and some other stuff, and their lip sucking is pretty good. But I'm curious if there's a difference between a hungry kiss and a thirsty kiss. That's what I was debating with one of my friends today. If thirsty and hungry are the same type of kiss. You think? I think it's probably the same. But
So
yeah.
this is me not really knowing what the kids use as lingo, but
Well, me
my
neither.
understanding is that thirsty means like I'm horny for you,
Right.
whereas hunger can come from a place of need, like I need you. And so that can be slightly different if you're using those definitions.
I think of
Mm.
hungry as being a little bit more, there's a little bit more
I want to
almost
be rav. Yeah.
force or
Yeah.
demand.
That's what I'm
So it's
thinking.
emotional, whereas thirst is a little bit more lustful and like just wanting to take in the other person as much as possible. That's my like yeah, I think okay, so I guess maybe it's because thirst, you're talking about liquid hungers, you're talking about
Mm-hmm.
solid things.
Mm-hmm.
Um uh, it just makes that's probably where my mind goes. I think water element type stuff for
Yeah.
thirst, a little bit more fluid, and whereas with hunger I just think a little bit more mechanical
Yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah.
but it's just how my mind goes. I don't, I think this is one of the things, it depends on the person you're talking to and how they
Yeah.
interpret.
But yeah, for books, I do love a good like head kiss. Like I love a forehead kiss. I think a forehead kiss is like so adorable. I love good forehead kisses. Like, and in life, I like forehead kisses too. But in general, yeah, hair pulling, hungry and wet. There we go. Um, that's where I'm at. I have just a couple more questions, and then I think we'll probably wrap up. But so do this one's kind of silly, but do you either of you talk in your sleep?
So I'm going to go first because I will embarrass John. So, John, are you okay with me mentioning more than one thing? Because you know the main thing.
I, if it's a
You know
story
the
I'm
main
thinking
thing.
about, then sure. But if there's one I've never heard, I mean, I guess I'll
Okay,
find out.
so not the one story you know that I'm going to bring up, but the other story is John doesn't always talk in his sleep, but he quite
Mhm.
often makes Wookiee noises.
Oh my God, we're living the same life.
Oh, really? Well,
Please,
I'm glad to know
please.
this isn't just me.
Oh my God. Please go ahead because now I want to
Okay.
listen.
And the main story is we were on our honeymoon, so this would be 9.5 years ago. And we took a road trip and we were driving from Edmonton to Calgary or Calgary to Saskatchewan, one or the other. And John was asleep, and I hear him mumble, William Shatner and time dilation. And then he woke up.
Now, I think we need to say that I was reading a complex analysis textbook, so
Oh.
somehow that's screwed up. Like, so that is what happens if you try and read that stuff and fall asleep in the car.
I love William Shatner. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I don't know about the noises, yes. And it's I don't know what triggers it, but yeah, it does happen here quite a bit. And that and my husband's really jumpy like when he sleeps. Like this like
Okay, so
that wakes me up a
can I
lot.
embarrass you some more, John?
Go for it.
So we have a giant ass bed because we
Hmm.
have to put pillows in between us because when he sleeps, his arms go up with his elbows pointed out. I'm describing it for the people at home. And
Uh-huh.
he elbows me in the face all
Oh my
effing
God.
night long.
Oh.
One night, like this is before when we had a smaller bed, like I had a pillow on top of me, like just sort of hugging it. He
Hmm.
reached over, grabbed the pillow, yanked it away from me, and then he held on tight, so I was not allowed to have it back. And then there was another night where I woke up at like 2 a.m. or something, and I see
Hmm.
his fist like an inch from my face. It's just like across the bed, right in my face.
So you're an active sleeper, John.
Oh yeah, yeah, very. I mean, I think I've been taking up meditation the last 4 or 5 years. I think it's helped me sleep a little bit less restless, but like all
Hmm.
my life, very, very restless sleeper.
Yeah.
And actually, there's certain things that I think I just never knew until Craig and I
Yeah.
were together, and then I'm hearing these stories about, really, I do that, really?
Yeah. And like, do you
Oh,
just not even remember? Because Craig, like for me with my
oh,
husband,
oh.
like if something happens in the middle of the night like that, like he jumps or like, like his body like moves all over the place or he accidentally like whacks me. Because generally we do sleep spoon style. So like when I'm getting spooned and then I'm getting like jerked, because he's like jumping or something. And then like the next morning I'm like, hello. And he's like, and I'm like, do you remember what happened last night? And he has like no recollection. So like when you do stuff like that, is that the same John that you don't even remember?
No, I didn't know I was doing that at all until
Yeah.
I hear stories from Craig
Yeah.
about what I do when I'm sleeping. Because
I'm so
yeah,
excited that this is something else that we can share. Oh, because yeah, he is a very active sleeper. But yeah, no, I don't talk in my sleep and I don't snore because I'm perfect. I'm just
Of
kidding.
course, of course.
No, no, but actually I he doesn't ever say it. So I think he's just such a deep sleeper and I'm like not really a deep sleeper, so I'm awake because I'm waking up from everything. So there's really not any time that he's just, he's awake and I'm asleep. So I don't think that happens very often. Oh yeah, that's fun to know though. Does John snore?
Sometimes, but not very often.
Yeah,
It's
my husband
more
doesn't snore
more
that much.
likely to be a Wookiee roar than a snore.
Yes. Yes, this is so funny. And then I have a super weird writing habit. I think I told you guys that, but I will only when I write, I listen to J-pop, K-pop, or C-pop when I write, just because I like to hear the emotion in the singer's voice. So I am trying to learn Japanese. It's not going that well for me because I haven't put that much time into it. But generally, I have no idea what I'm listening to. I just like the way that it sounds. But like when I write, I need it on and it helps me like connect to the emotion that I'm going for a little bit better. And it's pretty funny because afterwards, like when I'm done, like I'll look up the lyrics after I'm done writing, and then I'm like, oh yeah, no, that wasn't applicable to the situation at all. So I don't know. Do you guys have weird writing habits?
I'll go first because mine is kind of similar to yours. So back when I was a teenager, my friend and I were really into like Christian music, and so like
Mm-hmm.
I had this massive collection of Christian music
Mm-hmm.
CDs. And
Mm-hmm.
so I imported them all into my computer, and I don't use Spotify or Apple Music, don't really listen to the radio.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the time when I am writing hardcore erotica or editing hardcore erotica, I've got praise and worship music playing in my ears.
Was not expecting you to say that. I really wasn't. That is definitely an interesting habit for
Hmm.
sure. John, is
Well,
yours better than ours?
I don't know whether to call it weird, but it's definitely I don't think it's common. So I'm going to show you something. I'm going to show you a screen on my phone. These are timers. I
Wow,
time
he's
everything I
showing
do each
me a
day. You
screen
can
with
see
one,
there's
two,
one.
three, four. How many are there? Three, six,
8,
nine,
10,
10,
12,
12.
14, 15.
There's
Yeah.
15 timers on your phone?
Yeah, sleep is at the bottom. So basically, I learned this is related to when I shut all my notifications off. I learned to track my time, and it
Wow.
started with writing. So I liked the NaNoWriMo model. I don't personally like the idea of NaNoWriMo itself, where it's like 1 month and really go hard. I
Yeah.
like this idea of daily progress. But
Yeah.
what I found is when I finished a book, then the editing comes and it's like you stress yourself out to keep writing more words. And I realized that why track words when you could track time? Because I would have to discipline myself to get my butt in the seat for 20 minutes or 40 minutes or whatever it
Yeah.
might be. And so I like tracking time. And that thing I showed you is half of something, a system I use where I have a spreadsheet. At the end of the day, all those timers, they get entered into rows So they're like my habits of the day.
Wow.
And so I do that with writing. I started like those timers. It started when I realized I could do that with reading because I'm not getting my reading time in. And then
Yeah.
I just started to slowly map out everything else that I spend my time on. And now it's simple. Like it's like if I'm in one mode, I just tap a timer, and I spent a few years figuring it out. And
Wow.
there's really never like all of those things account for anything I could be doing at any point in the day. Because they're
Wow.
generalized. Like, so for example, I have a downtime timer. So if
Uh-huh.
ever I'm like not doing something, it's just like, okay, I'm not doing any of this stuff. It's just there. And then what that lets me see is in a year, it's like, how much downtime did I get? How much did
Ye-
I, and
That's
that could
really
be,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah. So it's weird. It's probably weird to most people, but I'll tell you, it sure as hell works for me. And it gets neat when you start to see the
Yeah.
percentages of how you spend your time. Like even sleep. I average about a little more than 8. So if I'm taking everything I've logged this year, and it's just like 32% of my life I'm sleeping. But that's cool.
Yeah.
I would have
I don't
never.
know if this counts as weird. I think this is like pretty cool. Like, I don't know if it counts as weird. It was weird seeing like 15 or whatever, however many timers on there.
Yeah.
Like, that was definitely weird, but it's really like, it's pretty cool. I don't know.
I'm
Like,
trying to turn it into an app, but
let me
it's
ask you this
a whole
question. Are
process.
either, because I feel like I know the answer, but I don't really know the answer. Are either of you very jealous over the other one?
Don't.
No,
No.
no.
Yeah. I was telling Craig the other day that I'm incredibly jealous over my husband. That's like that's just I don't know if that's like an Italian thing. My husband is the same way. So I was curious about that because what I'm going to say is that if there were a timer for how much time Craig and I spent in chat, like I think that we're going to like, we would work that timer over. Like that would be,
Mhm.
it would be a very large chunk of time.
Well, if we do, I do eventually turn this into an app where you can download it and use it. You could create your own. You could have it could be
The Cali and
Cali
Craig
Craig.
timer.
That would be the timer, and then
Yeah.
you could see in a year what percent of your year was that.
Was chatting with Craig. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
look at each
hilarious.
month and be like, oh, this month it was this month it was this. So
Yeah.
that's kind of neat. Yeah.
uh yes, for sure. That's it's a large portion of my day. But it's fun and I'm having so much fun working with Craig and I'm having so much fun working with you guys. It's super fun. Um and I think that's really it for us today. I think we have a full episode, guys. I think that's it.
And that brings us to the end of this very excellent and engaging episode. John, we like to force our guests to leave us with a final word. So, John, what is your final word for all of our listeners?
Well, I'm familiar with this. I got this treatment last time. I was fun. Well, I think especially we talked a lot about genre today, and just your story. How does it look if you're querying and just knowing whether you're on the right track. So I think what I would just want people to reflect on is it is very hard to put together just to describe this book you've spent all this time on.
Yeah.
There is something that we do. I'll reveal something about how we do things behind the scenes that maybe will may give you some help with this. So we authors don't write the blurbs to the books that we publish. Sometimes they do, but usually I have found I ask the editor to write the blurb. And so if you're really struggling with the blurb on your book or just how to describe it in 2 paragraphs, have somebody who you trust read your book, even if you end up hiring an editor or someone just to do a light read, and then ask them to write that and then work with that, because often you just need a different perspective on your story. And what that'll do is that'll help you see what's really there. And so that's just the idea. When you're doing this, it might be hard, but also it helps you see what is this book you wrote, and it might give you ideas of what needs to be revised. So yeah, it's a difficult process, but yeah, getting a different perspective I mean, it also is a chance just to have somebody else tell you, okay, this is what this book is, and it'll get you out of that tough place where you feel like you might be spinning your tires trying to figure out what is this book about anyway.
That's good advice. That's awesome. So thank you so much for joining us, John. That was really great.
And for everybody who's listening at home or in the car or at work or wherever you are, be sure to follow us on social media. We are on Instagram, TikTok, X, or Twitter, depending on what you want to call it, and Blue Sky as Cali Craig Talk.
Yeah. And thank you guys for joining us. This was super fun. Bye.
Thank you, John. Bye-bye.
Pleasure to be on.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye. Later.
Bye-bye.